Okay, beautiful. So we're going to a chapter called Challenges of Trust. To our mortal perception, God is not readily apparent. If you've got the book, by the way, it's in the foreword. Yeah, it doesn't actually have a page. XXXIV, if that helps anybody. Challenges of Trust. To our mortal perception, God is not readily apparent within our everyday experiences. We may believe that everything exists as part of God because there is nothing else but his reality. Oh, we did do this one. Science of Bitachon. Do you know what? I'll just say that brief chapter and then I'll go on because it's not very long. We may believe that everything that exists is part of God because there is nothing else but his reality. We may believe that he controls all and therefore all is truly good, even if we cannot appreciate it as such. There remains, however, an irreparable clash between our beliefs and the stark reality surrounding us and within us as well. Genuine trust is the product of tremendous effort. It is a lifelong endeavor to maintain our trust despite hardship and setback. We must believe deeply that all that happens to us is for our good, despite the limits of our mortal perception of that goodness. And we trust completely that all will become good in a way that we can indeed appreciate. This requires not just putting aside our instincts and human perspective, but also our egos. We surrender everything to God and trust him absolutely. Rather than feeling restricted, this relationship fills us with a wondrous sense of liberation and security. It is ultimately empowering. But how is it possible to achieve? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. If you've just joined, we are doing a section called Challenges of Trust, which is about, we just learned about the nature of trust and what it is and why we should trust. But this chapter deals with what do we do when things in life, you know, it's not very easy for us to just trust in Hashem because the reality is, as we can see right now, is very challenging to just trust that everything is good and all is good. And Jacqueline, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Just give me a wave if yes, or say hello or chat. Put in the chat if you can hear. Because we had a little bit of tech issues before. And again, this is an interactive meeting to discuss this book, Sha'ar HaBitachon. And if anybody wants to raise a question, please feel free to stop me and ask a question. This is discussion that's free for everybody to join in. So genuine trust is the product of tremendous effort. It is a lifelong endeavor to maintain our trust despite hardship and setbacks. We must believe deeply that all that happens to us is for our good, despite the limits of our mortal perception. And then there was a bit more that we've just gone over, but how is it possible to achieve? The simple response is determination and training. The spiritual reply revealed in the teachings of Hasidut is that a natural spark of trust already exists, buried deep within us. We each harbor a divine soul that at its purest core is intimately bound with God. The art of bitachon is to dig deeply within ourselves to unveil that part of us that is one with God and to continuously tap this infinite reservoir so as to maintain our tranquil trust. So what the foreword is saying here, and this is a continuous line throughout study of bitachon, is that it's already here. Emunah is already within us. It's like a muscle. We have inherited this from our fathers and great-grandfathers and mothers and great-grandmothers before us. I know very personally, my parents went through a war, that the thing that they came through with most clearly was an unshakable belief in Hashem. Whatever happened to them, I'm not saying that people are continuously believing in everything is good. We get a shock, we fall down, and we drop our trust for a minute. It's normal, it's human to think, where is Hashem in all this? Like, I struggle daily. And I'm sure everyone does in some form, especially with what's going on. But the difference about Jewish people in our nation and the emunah that we have is that it's a practice that we reinforce daily with davening, with our thoughts, with our kavanot. And this book will help us to reinforce that huge steel core of emunah within us that is there. We just need to shine away what's not true and wipe away that the illusions fall away so that we can see what's actually there was always there. So it's a question of determination, showing up like you are today, determined to come back, and training. So that's just receiving the wisdom of people like Bachya, like all the commentary, to understand how to foster the sense of emunah within ourselves. And last week I quoted a pasuk, which I would like to quote again because we didn't record it last week. It crashed. But I received the most beautiful wisdom from a lady called Rebbetzin Altuski. She's a character. She was in her 90s and she still gives shiurim on faith and emunah for women. And she said there's a pasuk called Kaveh el Hashem, Chazak ba'ametz libecha v'kaveh el Hashem. Why does it say Kaveh el Hashem twice? I'll translate it. Hope in Hashem, like trust in Hashem. Strengthen your heart and then trust in Hashem again. Because we all stumble. We all gonna, like, there's no one so pure that they trust in Hashem implicitly all the time and they think nothing is wrong. These are struggles. These are very real struggles. And that's what emunah is. It's seeing the light even in the pitch darkness. So the pasuk says, Kaveh in Hashem until you can't anymore. And when your emunah drops, strengthen your heart. Come to shiur like this. Seek advice from Rabbanim. Pray, connect, listen to music, whatever it is that you can connect again, and then get up, brush yourself down, and Kaveh el Hashem, hope again. Trust in Hashem, strengthen yourselves, and trust again. It's a process of, it's like gym training. Any muscle needs training. So sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there, but I think it's so important. This is such a beautiful point. Hashem responds in kind. When we awaken our essence, he reveals his, which represents a radical break from the routine relationship of creator and creation, whereby God hides himself in garments of nature to the point that the unnatural is likely to occur. God himself is infinitely beyond the natural rules. He also is infinitely beyond the spiritual systems that are designed to provide proportional responses to our deeds. Therefore, God can choose at any minute to deliver impossible blessings, even while allowing nature to remain securely in place. Salvation can occur when it seems impossible, and whether or not our heavenly score sheet considers us deserving. This is Hashem's response to our powerful bitachon in him. So what it's saying here is that no matter whether or not we think we're deserving of something, we can always ask, and we can always trust that Hashem is good and will give us a good answer. So I'm just going to pause there for a second before I go on, in case anybody has any questions. Okay, I'll continue. The science of bitachon, a useful and highly inspiring tool to cultivate bitachon, is the insight into how bitachon functions, not its definition, application, or consequences, but the spiritual mechanism by which it operates. Such a precious gift of insight, which has only become available to the average Jew in recent time, allows us to recognize what we are accomplishing and understand why bitachon is so effective. For this kind of wisdom, we turn to Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah. Kabbalistic tradition reveals the divine structure behind creation, the ways in which God relates to his creation, his creatures, and the effects of our deeds. Its wisdom is metaphoric, esoteric, and impenetrable to the uninitiated. It has been redeemed in the extensive teachings of Chabad Hasidus that explore and explain these concepts on intellectual platters that are well within reach, in addition to offering original revelations of its own. Perhaps too briefly, we will outline the Kabbalah of Bitachon as elucidated in Hasidut. And it's quoting from the Tanya and the Kutus Sichos from the Babitcher Rebbe and lots of other sources like that. So these are the principles that are now being explained to the layman, to the simple people like you and I, whereas in previous centuries it was reserved only for Kabbalists, but now there is a movement in Hasidus to bring Kabbalah to normal people like you and me so that we better understand what bitachon is, how it benefits us, and how the spiritual emanations of every single thought and our deeds are literally cause and effect, having a real effect in our real lives today. Hashem is infinite in the most perfect sense. Anything that we consider existing other than Hashem himself is limited in some form. Right? Does that make sense? Hashem chose to bridge that divide in order to allow for the creation of the spiritual and physical universes through a process described as tzimtzum, contraction. God's infinite divine energy contracts itself through a series of powerful acts of self-concealment that screen and condense its light. Each subsequent tzimtzum further conceals divinity. Between one contraction and the next, however, the newly condensed divine energy radiates and creates a new realm of existence or world. I'm just going to close the window because there's a bit of noise coming in, so I want to disturb everybody. Yeah. In this way, all of creation forms a systematic chain of descent, which is called the Seder Hishtalshelut, like Seder Hishtalshelut. It has the word shalosh in there, three. It's like a loop, a looping, like a spiral, almost like how emanation comes down to us. With God's, I even see it sometimes as like a kind of double helix, the double helix of nature, and how waves of energy radiate throughout the world. Because in science, it's very interesting to me that everything radiates, all energy radiates in waves in this way. With God's infinite light at the very top, and with our physical universe at the furthest, darkest extreme. There are countless contractions and countless realms, but generally speaking, the Kabbalists group the cosmos into four primary worlds. The first is closest to the divine source, Hashem, and they call the first realm Atzilut. It comes from the word Eitzel, which means close to Hashem, although that is only relatively speaking. This powerful and pristine realm is ultimately divine and utterly good and perfect. It cannot sense its own existence, and there is certainly no room for evil. The second realm, almost impossibly removed from Atzilut, is Bria, creation. It is still a highly sacred realm, but it harbors the initial possibility for divine expression other than revealed goodness. This is a result of the components of Bria being able to sense themselves as independently existing, although they simultaneously sense their utter dependence on God's light for that existence. A third realm, far lower in terms of concealment, is the world of Yetzirah, formation. Evil emerges in some form, to the point that the Kabbalists describe Yetzirah as containing half good and half bad. Finally, our material world is referred to, the one that we live in right now, like the world we see, is referred to as Asiya, action. Here, God's light is utterly hidden, and our sense of independent existence is absolute. This world is overwhelmingly evil by default, meaning that a strong effort is required to form any connection with God. So it's like the resistance is at maximum. We have to literally battle and struggle our way through illusion and misperception of what is real to connect with God. Yet, as unpleasant as that sounds, our corporeal world is actually the crowning purpose of all existence. Why? So that we can fulfill God's desire for our effort-laden relationship with him, specifically amid a reality that denies his divinity and conceals his goodness. Essentially, this world is a place for growth, and there cannot be growth without struggle. We can now understand that everything God does is good, as the Talmud tells us. Each blessing, every act of creation or nurture, all of which flows down to us from God, filters through the above described system. Blessing first enters as pure and sacred goodness in the highest realm, Atzilut. It then makes its way down the entire system until it emerges in our tangible reality. There is a catch. As the flow of energy descends towards us, it is repackaged by the nature of expression intrinsic to each subsequent realm. In other words, the concealment of divinity in the lower worlds affects the flow of divine nurture, giving rise to the possibility that the goodness may become obscured. Indeed, when the blessing finally lands in our laps, it may appear in the most negative of disguises. It is goodness, but it can look and feel like negativity or even calamity. That is why small blessings are more likely to arrive as perceptible goodness. The smaller blessings do not invite the same resistance at each stage of contraction of the divine flow. By contrast, when an abundance of divine goodness is poured into the system, it can be too intense for the limitations of the spiritual dynamic of our world to handle, and the resultant pushback can result in disguised goodness which dresses the flow in terms that our world can tolerate. How are we doing so far? These are all very, very, very deep concepts, and they're a little bit difficult for me even to understand. So I'm wondering if any of you have any insight on any of what we've just talked about, or any thoughts or anything that you're finding difficult to understand.
Feels like the seed on the ground. We are the seed on the ground trying to get out to the light.
Yeah, that's more of an easy analogy to understand for me, actually. Thank you for that. Beautiful. Okay. Needless to say, God is not limited to this process, as previously mentioned. He can override it as he deems necessary. When that occurs, God's all encompassing and infinite goodness is revealed to us in a manner that we can appreciate as tremendous blessing. It is specifically with bitachon that we can proactively trigger such a revelation. So that's the bit that I find the most heartening and beautiful to hang on to out of all the things that I'm learning here, is that we're limited, but God isn't limited. And we always have access to God, always. And the minute that we access God in an authentic way, we can, it's almost like a shortcut. There's a tunnel that's dug, almost like those Hamas tunnels from Israel to Gaza. It's like whoosh, and you're there. Like, I mean, I don't even like to compare it to that. That's a terrible comparison. Let's talk about the Channel Tunnel. 2 hours and you're sitting on a train and you're in France. It doesn't take so long anymore to reach it because you've created a tunnel, you've created a conduit, you've created a passageway from your heart to God's heart directly. We already are connected. We were just not seeing that. And the minute you see it, you're there. It doesn't take longer than a minute. It is specifically with bitachon that we proactively trigger such a revelation. When we face hardship and choose to respond with firm bitachon, we're advancing a relationship with God that bypasses the spiritual system. We recognize that whatever God does is good, thereby associating our physical world of Asiya experience with its purely positive origin in the realms of Atzilut. We trust that whatever appears negative is nothing more than that, an outward appearance. In essence, it is good. Hashem responds to such bitachon by allowing the appearance to fall away. He loosens the grips of the spiritual contraction, permitting the goodness to flow unhindered into reality. This insight greatly strengthens our bitachon. Without it, we must believe that whatever God does is good and elevate that belief to the point that it becomes trust. Now, however, we know and can explain that reality, which adds power to our degree of trust. More importantly, this sacred knowledge makes trust in God far easier to achieve in the first place. So do you see how knowing that that shortcut exists actually creates the shortcut? It's as if I say to you, you're struggling, you're on a journey, you're trying to get up. I was told once this lovely analogy about someone who climbs a mountain and he tries every route, and he has terrible things that happen to him along the way, and this route takes him to a dead end, and this route there are wild animals that attack, and that route is just icy and dangerous, and that route he has to keep coming back, and by the time he gets to the mountain it's almost like it's taken years to accomplish the summit. But when he gets to the summit, he can see down, and when he can see down, he can see there's a much easier route, and so he can then call his friends at the bottom and say, listen, you don't need this, and this. You can just come up the straight route. I found one for you. I can see it from here. A person who has bitachon, person who's struggled, who's been through those struggles, who's real, who's not just like, oh, la, 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 I have bitachon. No, he's actually struggled, or she has actually struggled in life and been through things. Each one of us has had struggles in our lives, and we think, why? But then one day, a situation happens where we can impart that light to others because we have been through that and can shine a light for someone else to make it that much easier for them. So too, a person who has even an ounce more bitachon than the next person can shine that light forward, and that becomes the shortcut, and that joins onto the beautiful tunnel of light from us to God, where we know we might not know the whole way there yet, but just knowing that there is a way, that can be enough to get you to the next level. That can be enough. Just knowing in our heart that our ancestors before us, they went through all these troubled times. They went through pogroms and massacres and the Inquisition. And here we are, because they found they had access to that trust. They found it. Do we know how they did it? No. Do we need to know? No. We know that there is access. We know that there is. The reason we know is because we're still Jews today. We wouldn't be without that. And that's the promise that bitachon gives us. So I'm just going to leave it there. And if anybody wants to talk about it or chat or ask any questions, but I think that's like a lot to digest already. Or do you feel complete? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's as you say, I'm trying to digest. I've been
It's a lot. It's a
I've
lot.
been visualizing the guy on the top of the mountain, and he went through all the troubles and all the suffering and through all the frozen limbs, and the others. It's so much easier for them to climb up.
Yeah.
So my question is, why again are we thrown into the same into the same hole as our grandparents in the Holocaust? Why again it's happening? How did we get too complacent? Was it too easy for us to climb up? Taking in consideration the recent events.
Yeah. That is the question we're all being called on to ask ourselves. That is the question. I don't have an answer.
No, but nobody has probably.
Yeah, I mean, there is a question and it's hanging there in the air for all of us to explore. Each one of us, I think, is going to have to come to our own answer. I can't give you my answer. I ask that question every morning, and my answer is it's for myself. I can share it with you, and if it helps you, that's great. It may not. Is I don't know. And all I know is that I can have faith or I can have not faith. And I know which way I want to choose because faith is the way of light and not faith just leads me into a rabbit hole of darkness. And I was born a Jew, I'm going to die a Jew. The Jews who came before me had faith. My mother had faith. She survived 3 years in Auschwitz. And yeah, I feel that this current time, this current climate, from even COVID to all the disasters that have happened to the world, all these volcanoes and earthquakes, to this current atrocious situation now, is calling on me where my faith was complacent. It was. I was like, I'm a Jew, I'm living in London, I'm safe, fine. I don't have to go through all that stuff. Like, I don't need to think about it. My parents did for them, not me. Maybe I'm required too to step up, just by virtue of being a Jew, by virtue of being someone whose calling is to be a light unto the nations. That's what we're called to do. Maybe there's a general, maybe it's not on the Jewish nation, it could be on the nations of the world. And we're being called to light that way. And the only way we can do that is by experiencing the darkness and shining a light into that. None of these are answers. These are all also questions, if you see what I'm saying. But
I don't think anyone has answers. Nobody understands. One thing we know, that one thing at least it's confirmed, that every time we separate and we split, it has to take a tragedy to bring us together.
Yeah,
that's the sad part. But probably that's the faith of humanity in this world. That's how it works.
That's the message. For sure, that's definitely one of the messages that I'm receiving. Loud and clear, Am Yisrael Chai, we're united, we're together. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Aura. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for now. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate every single one of you. And have a very good day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.
Pleasure. Bye.